Hello, fellow students of Jewish history. I've just returned from an amazing cruise in the Netherlands and Belgium with Kosher River Cruises, and I have to say that although there were so many fantastic things, and I made a couple of short videos about a few of them, the highlight, without question, was this amazing Shabbos we spent in Middelburg, where we visited this synagogue that is just so fantastic. Let me tell you about it. So if you walk down a street called Herenstraat, you'll see this tiny little opening that goes through an alley. At the top of it says Beit HaKnesset, right, synagogue, and then it has the year Tahallel, using the Hebrew word you will praise, that works out to the year 1704. And that's, okay, interesting, charming. I want to see what's inside. But what I think is especially unusual is that little plaque on the left, which is only in Dutch, and it describes a story. And you can see that under the Star of David and kind of a Lion of Judah, it has 4 dates. Built in 1704, occupied, that is by the Nazis, in 1940, destroyed, in this case by a British mortar, in 1944. And those 3 lines you will frequently see on monuments of this nature. But then there's another line that says reconstructed 1994. And to my amazement, not only was the Synagogue of Middelburg reconstructed as a physical entity, it's actually been repopulated. That everyone thought Jews had basically disappeared from this middle-sized town, but they began coming back once the synagogue was created. I'm going to tell you the whole story, and more importantly, I'm going to let some of the principal figures involved tell the story in this video. So first of all, let's just see where exactly is Middelburg. Here's a map of Europe, and you can see the Netherlands where it's located, just about equal to London, but across on the continental side of the channel, of course. And in our cruise, we started in Amsterdam, which is a major Jewish center, and then we went all the way down through canal zones to the city of Antwerp. Very big population center there, where I had some great experiences tasting herring and things like that. Then we rode the ship down to the medieval village of Ghent and nearby Bruges, also very important. And then we made our way up to this little place called Middelburg and nearby Veere. Veere would be very important because that's the home of Ad Vos, who is going to be a major player in this story. And then after the trip, we went to Rotterdam, where we actually saw, it was pretty bizarre, a reconstruction of Noah's Ark. And then shortly after it, we saw a rainbow, which was very spooky. At any rate, that was our whole trip. We went back to Amsterdam and flew out of Schiphol Airport a week later. So let's focus in on Middelburg now. Here's an old map of the city, and you can see there's like kind of a ring road around a really old core, and then towards the bottom by the letter H, there is something that says a Israelitische Kerk, or a Jewish church. In other words, this map labels the synagogue. The entrance is on Herenstraat to the right, but to the left is the home of the original builder of the synagogue. He had what they call in Dutch an achterhuis, a behind house. It's the same word that is used for the structure in which Anne Frank and her family hid during the Holocaust. And he wanted to dedicate that space to becoming a synagogue. And so that's the actual structure we're going to see. We also have an illustration of the synagogue in an almanac that was published in 1780, which is very fascinating. It has a whole bunch of entries about what Jews believe and what they do in synagogue and things like that. And we have a pretty good idea of the plan of the synagogue. If you have a look at this modern drawing, you can see Herenstraat, the entrance is on the south at the bottom of this drawing. There's kind of like a narrow alleyway, and then there's a garden to the right, sort of like an open space where the sukkah can be placed. The mikveh is placed just south of there, and then just north of there is that square building with that unique kind of roof that is the synagogue itself. We see that the roof was preserved as long as 1940 when this particular photograph was taken. It's prominent in the foreground here. And we even have some photographs from the beginning of the 20th century that shows the heavy traditional kind of furniture that was in place in the synagogue. This is the view towards you'll see those distinctive 2 windows featured in the reconstructed synagogue as well. Unfortunately, in the context of World War II, the entire town of Middelburg was emptied of Jews. They were deported to the death camps, and the synagogue was occupied by the Nazis. when the Allies reconquered the region in the context of fighting, a British mortar landed on the synagogue and destroyed it completely. This is a view of the destroyed roof. And by the time the conflict was over, you can see that there's only a few shells of walls that stand around the open space that once was the synagogue. And over the course of time, this was neglected, and in fact, trees even grew in the consecrated ground. There's one that grows right where the contemporary bima stands today. And the elements had their way, and basically by the time you got to the late 20th century, there was nothing left except for a few exterior walls. And this is the way it would have stayed were it not for the intervention of Ad Vos. He's shown here with David Lawrence of Kosher Riverboat Cruises in his remarkable home in Viera, which is just a few kilometers away from Middelburg. Here's a picture of some other guy with Dr. Vos as well. Now, by the way, he's not Jewish, but he just felt that it was wrong for the community to ignore this centuries-old holy place to Jews, and so he engineered a tremendous effort, bringing together all kinds of social groups and all kinds of local community organizations to support the raising of funds to rebuild the synagogue. He published a book on that topic. Several articles of his are in this book, and amazingly, he succeeded. But that's not the whole story. That in itself, I think, is quite remarkable. But what is really amazing is what happened afterwards. Once the synagogue was constructed, Jews began to reappear in Middelburg. And now it is a fully functioning synagogue. So this is just an example of the amazing things that David Lawrence and Kosher Riverboat Cruises does. We invited Ad Vos and Luke Smith, a very important person in the community, to come join us on the ship for Shabbat. They came Friday night and had a meal with us. And before Shabbat began, we heard their story. And so I have video of them telling the story of this remarkable synagogue. I'd like to share a little bit of it with you right now.
After the war in 1945, almost everybody thought that Jewish life had come to an end here in Middelburg. Only some Jews came back from the camps or from the hiding places, and the synagogue was damaged. But after 50 years, after the restoration, Jewish life recovered here in Middelburg. There are more synagogues restored after the war, but most of them got another destination, sometimes as a church, even a mosque or a museum, and sometimes as a museum that tells us about Jewish life from before the war, depicting Jewish life as a vanished world. But the Synagogue of Middelburg is not a museum, but a real synagogue where every Shabbat and every Yom Tov has divine services.
I mean, let's just recap here. You have this shell of a building, 300-year-old synagogue that is destroyed, and a local non-Jew says, you know what, it's not right, we've got to rebuild it. He rebuilds it, and that attracts one or two Jews.
And we got very important support from the churches of Middelburg, from the City Council of Middelburg, from other authorities, and from hundreds of private sponsors.
They raise money to buy a Torah scroll. That attracts more Jews. And ultimately, you have a community of Jews praying in Middelburg that hasn't been seen for half a century. It's a remarkable renaissance.
He was the man who made it possible to rebuild the synagogue. And we are, until the day of today, we are very thankful to him.
And then we were very fortunate to hear the personal story of Luke Smith, a man whose mother was Jewish and survived the Holocaust by going underground as a young girl, meaning posing as a Christian. By the time the war was over and her entire family was killed, she was just a teenager. She just went on living as a Christian, and she raised her children afterwards as Christians. In fact, one of his brothers is actually a priest, and they occasionally have to call him to make a minyan. Luke's story was absolutely riveting.
And I was a little boy, 4 years, and she said always when we walked to the butcher, she said, look behind you, because tomorrow it can be happened again. So I was raised with fear to be a Jew, fear to be part of the family, of a Jewish family. And I didn't know anything of Judaism.
You have Shabbat happening there.
So we started to take the candles. And to take the candles, to start to make the candles burn, on Friday night, my Jewish candle was also burning. And I was always thinking, I'm the only Jewish man here in Middelburg. I never met Jewish people, I didn't know. And then finally I heard from a Dutch surgeon in the hospital working at Vos, and he was busy with the restoration of the synagogue in Middelburg. I didn't know what a synagogue was. So we met first time in a hotel where some Jewish people have Rosh Hashanah. I learned something about Rosh Hashanah, and I know the first night of Rosh Hashanah we came there, and one of the women had made round challah, and the man from her, he makes the blessing about the challah. I was touched. And we walked back and we said, oh, we have celebrating Rosh Hashanah. He said a blessing. So it was for me, it was a miracle. And then the synagogue started to rebuild. But the problem was, we have a very nice synagogue, a very nice building, but we didn't know what to do in it.
They don't have a full-time rabbi yet in Middelburg, but they bring in rabbis from neighboring communities.
And then I was learning in Amsterdam and in Antwerp by rabbis and by chazans. And the whole year I have cassette decks, and I learn Alenus Shibeach. You can imagine that it was from here to Rotterdam and back. And I thought, when Hashem decide that he built a shul in Middelburg, I go to pray every day there. So the first 5 years I go every morning to the synagogue to pray alone, because there was no one else to join me. And I couldn't read Hebrew very good. So I did Adon Olam. You know Adon Olam? I think 55 minutes, and then it was done. So I start, and then I go working. And we started with the Friday evening. One Friday evening, the women make coffee and apple and everything, and people come, and more people come, and so we get a little Jewish community. And now we have what Art says, we have celebrations every Friday and every Saturday. We have celebration of Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, and I'm still learning. It is a very special thing because I was learning and the people were also learning with me. Because the first time of Erev Shabbat, I had learned Lecha Dodi to sing. And I said to the people, we sit like this, I can sing Lecha Dodi, shall we? And I learned them Lecha Dodi singing. And then they want to more, and I learn more. And so we started with only Lecha Dodi on Friday night to the whole service now on Shabbos and on the festivals.
They have Brit Milah going on there, circumcision. They have young people, children in the community. Here's a Pidyon Aben with a child who's somewhat older than 3 months, but nevertheless, it is beautiful to see this happening.
And since that time, we had on the Sabbath morning 15 or 20 Jewish people in the synagogue. They come from everywhere. Young people, newer people from Rotterdam who start here to work, an Orthodox family who worked in Rotterdam but who wants to live in Middelburg, and still they come. We're growing. Sometimes Sabbath morning we have minyan. We never thought. So it's amazing. It's really a miracle.
Bar mitzvahs, they celebrate the holiday cycle there with Sukkot, and they have weddings there. I mean, it's just so absolutely fantastic that this community has come alive again.
Today it was, for me, I was crying on my bicycle today. You didn't know me, but I never saw so many Jews in Middelburg walking. Today I saw people looking. There was a guy with a kippah and the tzitzit, and it was in a discussion, and I was with my bicycle. It was so nice to see. It was a miracle from Hashem for me, but I think also for here to see that there are still Jewish people, there are still Jewish life. and that we are still there. And
It was so amazing to go visit this shul on Shabbat. Obviously, I couldn't take any live footage on Saturday while we were there, but what an amazing place. I'm so grateful to Kosher River Cruises for giving me the opportunity to see this community being resurrected under the direction of people like Luke Smith and Odd Voss. Wow. Can't wait for the next cruise. Thank you very much for watching.
when this man makes the shul rebuild, and we meet each other, and now I can stand here before you, so many Jewish people in Middelburg, and I can join you here to eat kosher in Middelburg on a ship. We walk to the Red Sea, you know, that's all. I hope we meet tomorrow, you in the synagogue, and to see you all, and when you have some questions, we can talk then to the night, I think. Thank you.